Hi everyone, my name is Demi, I'm from Rockstar Priestess and welcome to Venus Church. So today in Venus Church we are going to be exploring some lesser known aspects of Aphrodite. So we're kind of having a history lesson today as part of our Venusian sermon. And we're going to be seeing how she continued into the Western world after the end of polytheism and the Greek Empire, which is pretty cool. So my lovelies, welcome to Venus Church. Thank you so much for coming. This is our weekly time to really reconnect in with the goddess of love as the heart of what it means to be in goddess spirituality. For me, I'm biased, because I love this stuff. But we're connecting in with the goddess of love as the heart of femininity, of life, of aliveness, of non-duality and union today in our Venus Church. So if you will take a breath in with me, breathing in. We call to the divine goddess Venus. She of many forms and many faces. She who was Inanna Astarte in ancient Sumeria. She who was Isis Hathor in Egypt. She who was Ashtoreth and Astarte in Syria and in the Levant. She who was Atargatis in Syria. She who was Kypris in Crete. She who was Aphrodite in Greece. She who was Venus in Rome. She who became, in part, Mother Mary, and she who takes many other faces and facets around the world, Freya, Rhiannon, Oshun, Lakshmi, Parvati, all the goddesses of love and wealth and beauty from all around the world. We call to you to be with us today. Bless our lives, change us so that we may be open to see your beauty, to see your energy and your strength. May we see that by embracing you, by embracing softness and the arts of the feminine, the beauty of being alive, the presence of being, the lusciousness of touch, and the sweet, sweet joy of innocence and gorgeousness in the world. By opening to these feminine arts, we enrich our lives and the lives of those around us. We create a life worth living. So Venus, be with us, change us so that we may see. Open our eyes and help us sink into your deep, deep embrace, so that we may know love in manifest form in this world. So lovelies, today in Venus Church, I would like to read from a very fabulous book. Venus Church is kind of my opportunity to geek out with you about what kind of awesome books you should be reading. And this is from the book Venus and Aphrodite, History of a Goddess by Bettany Hughes. It's very, very good and it's very beautiful. And today we're talking about how the goddess changes. So, when we think about the ancient goddesses, we think about Aphrodite, we think about Hera, we think about Artemis, we think about Athena. They're very famous, everybody knows those guys. When we think about them, they have very clear, distinct, defined roles. Yes. Aphrodite is very different from Artemis. Artemis is very different from Hera. So we are working with this very defined, you are this and I am that, which is not actually how goddess stuff works. Let me just fix my lighting situation. I'm like a pasty white blub. Okay, it's gonna be what it is today. So when we think about these goddesses, they are very separately put into different boxes, but that's not how it is. And we can spend ages arguing over if Hera was like this or like that, because we're looking for one answer, right? We're looking for the right answer. But with goddess stuff, with the divine, there is never one right answer. There is never just one version of these goddesses. They are not as two-dimensional as we have been simplistically taught to believe in our childhoods devouring mythology books and stuff. Gods and goddesses, deities, and this applies to every single deity, not just the Greek ones, not just Aphrodite, not just love goddesses, they shift and change. Divinity is still and essentially always the same and always moving and changing. And you can see this in the evolution of Aphrodite and those what tend to be called in modern days like witchy goddessy land, the rose goddesses. So the line of Aphrodite, that love goddess line, from Astarte to Hathor to Kypris that we talked about in our opening prayer. That line is an evolution of a deity. This is how one manifestation of deity has shifted and changed, and she always shifts and changes. One of the core things about goddess spirituality and about the goddess in witchcraft and in Wicca as well is that she always changes. She changes everything she touches changes. Of course it makes sense if everything she touches changes, she is also changing and shifting, yes? So when we're thinking about Aphrodite and these love goddesses, they are not one-dimensional, they are multi-dimensional. So some aspects I would love for you to think about when we're thinking about Aphrodite is that she had many different names. And I have a beautiful free guidebook I'll share with you at some point where you can learn more of these names. But some of the names I would like you to think about are, she had a very popular name of Pandemos, which meant Aphrodite for the people. Aphrodite Pandemos. That was the Aphrodite that the common people loved. And she had a lot of influence in ancient Greece and before. And she was a very beloved goddess. And this was someone who was there for all the people's everyday concerns. Hey, Chris. So Aphrodite Pandemos would be prayed to and given offerings to and be invoked for regular people when they had any kind of trouble, really. Money troubles, infidelity troubles, I need to get pregnant troubles, oh my god, I don't want to get pregnant troubles, my mother-in-law is driving me crazy troubles. She would be there for all the people about anything, okay? And part of the for the people thing was the sensuality and sexuality aspect. Aphrodite Pandemos was often associated with sexuality, and that is where she came through as a goddess of sexuality for the people. Because sex is a very big part of everybody's life. It is a big human drive we all have. It is a huge source of joy and intimacy and connection. So of course people are going to want to talk about it with their goddess, right? So we have Aphrodite Pandemos, who was a big influence. She's great. We're all team Aphrodite Pandemos. What is really interesting is that the new epithet came to describe Aphrodite, which came much later than when she was worshipped. And it is called Aphrodite Uranis, which means heavenly Aphrodite, which I love because I love the idea of Aphrodite taking on this kind of sky goddess, Nuit kind of vibe, and being this source of heavenly love and nourishment, because she's that as well. She's everything. All the goddesses are everything. It's not just Aphrodite based. All the goddesses can do everything. It's their vibe, okay? They're shapeshifters, every single one. So we have this new epithet of Aphrodite Pandemos, which doesn't really, Aphrodite Uranis, which doesn't really come around until after, well, it's definitely in the AD. It's not in the BC, so this is in the AD. So this Aphrodite Uranis comes around mostly after Christianity has started its thing. And Aphrodite Uranis becomes very big because what you have to understand is Aphrodite and Venus had a really big presence in the ancient world, and when the new Christian religion was coming in, they kind of did if you want to get people to be on with a new thing, you kind of have to link it to something before. So this is what they did with saints. They knew that all the pantheistic people of the whole of Europe were going to find it a bit difficult to get on board with there just being one person they could call on instead of a whole host of people for different things. So the concept of saints was invented. And pretty much all the, well, not all, but a lot of the major gods in the ancient world got turned into saints. We have a saint, I'm not going to try and remember the names because I will fail, but I do know that in Malta there was a really big temple complex to Venus, and she had a really profound influence there. So in the 4th century they canonized a saint, I think it was 4th century, they canonized a saint, Saint Venera, who lived in Malta. She was a Maltese saint associated with Venus. This is a way to get Venus in with the Christian people, yeah? So there is this retelling of stories, retelling of old myths that happens as people begin to bring new paradigms and new realities in. So they had a really vested interest in making Aphrodite into something that they could connect with in the Christian church. So the name Uranus came into use. This was an Aphrodite who wasn't gross and sexy and like lascivious and like with her tits out all the time being all horny. This was a non-horny Aphrodite. This was an Aphrodite who fit so much more in with what these new Christian folks and these new ideals of stuff, what they thought was acceptable for a divine feminine presence to be connected with. And also what is really, really interesting is we get all these, like this epithet Uranus, heavenly Aphrodite. We have Mary, Queen of Heaven, Queen of the Sea, Stella Maris, and we have beautiful, beautiful examples. Stella Maris was also a name for Aphrodite once upon a time, as far as I understand. We have all these examples of these great Venus complexes and sites of worship for Venus and Aphrodite becoming Mary churches, becoming the centers of this new Marian devotion, because it's just the divine feminine in a different form. I mean, minus the horny bits, but it is still that continuation of divine feminine. So I wanted to read to you a little bit about some of the temples that really did get turned. So this beautiful book, the lady is talking about how, the author is talking about how Aphrodite, a 4,000-year-old goddess, very old, is very difficult to dethrone overnight, like we were just talking about. Aphrodite was not destroyed, she simply shapeshifted once more. Astarte, Aphrodite, Venus's tenacity across the 4 millennia before the birth of Christ demonstrated that humans wanted the comfort and stimulation of a strong, sympathetic female presence as an intercessor with the supernatural world. So, counterintuitively, in the monotheistic climate of Christendom, Aphrodite survived the Christian Revolution in no less a guise than the Virgin Mary herself. If you make your way up to the Troodos mountain range in central Cyprus, through leafy plane trees, there is the opportunity to meet a priest at the monastery of Panagia Truditisia, we'll say, who will proudly show you the many letters of thanks that he has been sent by grateful women. Father Ephemios' secret. Behind the altar frieze there is a silver belt said to be blessed by the Virgin Mary, which some believe has life-giving powers. The celibate man of God, gentle, offering homemade pickled walnuts with his mobile phone to hand, is very clear that this is not a magic belt. But he is also clear that it, or the power of prayer it encourages, is effective. Dating back to the 9th century, this monastery is also known as the Monastery of Panagia Aphroditisia. The whole mountainside was once sacred to Aphrodite Acrea, Aphrodite of the high mountains. And, as an aside, many of Aphrodite's temple complexes were at the top of mountains or at the top of outcrops or at the top of hills. Back to the book. This relic here, the silver belt, is remarkably similar to Aphrodite's girdle of mythology. Her ornate Kestos Himeus, behind which was contained all her power and the power of love, a magic belt indeed. And you will remember, if you've read any other love goddess mythology, that this belt of Aphrodite, this belt and girdle of the love goddesses, is repeated all over in so many different mythologies. This magic belt and girdle is very, very important. So, Mary's girdle, medieval authors recalled, was dropped en route to heaven to prove to doubting Thomas that the Assumption was indeed taking place. A likely story. And another of Aphrodite's favourites, the dove, was a companion of Mary, only this time at the Annunciation. Frescoes in Mount Athos, in Syria and in Cyprus, also show Mary breastfeeding Jesus with the milk of paradise. The equation between Aphrodite as a nurturer or protector of children, a Kourotrophos, and the Virgin Mary is obvious. And of course, Aphrodite was someone who was prayed to for children when people got married, for a successful marriage, which is usually to make babies back in those days. Another Christian church dedicated to All Holy Mary, the Church of Panagia Katholiki, was built in the centre of Aphrodite's precinct at Paphos in the 12th century, Paphos being her biggest cult centre in Cyprus. Old women with health issues or young women with fertility problems still come there to make small offerings at the pagan stones used to build the Orthodox Church. Cups of milk, of pomegranates, of little cakes. Their votive gifts are strikingly similar to those from votaries who came here to worship the goddess for over 3,000 years before. And little cakes, milk, pomegranates, old-timey offerings to Aphrodite throughout the 4,000 years. In many ways, particularly in the East, Mary of Nazareth was the ancient teenage mother goddess, her face unchanged, enjoying a new outing in clothes. The medieval population of Christendom did not want to risk losing contact with a sublime female creature whose powers of cohesion and union were becoming ever more relevant. So that is from the book Venus and Aphrodite, History of a Goddess by Bethany Hughes. It's bloody brilliant. You should defo read it. So there we see that Aphrodite just shapeshifted. And I would love for you, if you're in the West, if you're somewhere that celebrates or has a Catholic tradition and you're seeing these churches of Virgin Mary, just remember that this Virgin Mary figure became the new emblem of Aphrodite. This Virgin Mary figure who was Stella Maris, she was the Virgin Mary, the star of the sea. Aphrodite was the goddess of the sea. She was Thalassa, she was Andiamene, she who was born from the sea. She was Urania in later times. She was Acrea, she was goddess of the heights, mistress of the stars. She was Pasifessa, she who shines brightly. She was Dia, the shining one. And she was blue. Yeah, she loved this blue colour of the sea. So whenever you see these churches with Aphrodite, and something I really encourage everybody in goddess spirituality to do. I know there's a lot of animosity between us pagan lot and the church lot, there's a lot of animosity between us, but I encourage you to see our goddesses in there. These are stories that we can also see with love, and whenever I am in a church, which is often because I'm a bit obsessed with them, I love going to see the Virgin Mary bit and staying in there and remembering that she is also a facet of Aphrodite. She is also a facet of Morgan Le Fay, because she is I'll write the name of the book, Sophie, because she is a blue priestess, the new way of connecting with that all-important divine feminine essence. She's not the enemy. She is our OG goddess, just wearing a different dress. So that's what I would love to leave you with today in Venus Church. So sisters, I would love for us all to breathe in. And with our eyes closed, I would love for you to imagine in your mind's eye, starry Aphrodite, wild curling hair crowned with a crown of stars, decked in blue, because even though Aphrodite was often depicted naked in the Renaissance, because that made the old guys get horny, in the ancient texts she was always dressed in haute couture. Of course, who wouldn't be dressed in haute couture if you were a goddess? So we're seeing Aphrodite dressed in the most resplendent embroidered blue dress with gold clasped and wearing a silver crown of stars. Hearing the water of the sea lapping on the shore and the moonlight of the sea. And we're just going to see her shapeshift so she becomes the Virgin Mary, veiled in blue, crowned with stars, underneath the moon and by the lapping seashore. And we're going to see these goddesses kind of flicker and merge into each other, both pulling out different aspects of the same magical essence of love. And we're just going to breathe that in. And lovelies, I thank you for coming to Venus Church today. Make sure that you comment below one thing you are celebrating this week, because at Venus Church we celebrate. So we're celebrating one thing, and we're also saying one thing that we deeply, deeply appreciate, and we just take a moment to really appreciate that. So today I'm really appreciating that I got my paperback copy of this book in the post finally. Oh, and I thought I was gonna have to wait a month for it. And I am really, 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 really grateful for Venus Church. I love this. I'm so glad you like nerdy Aphrodite history with me. So I'm sending you lots of love. Have a beautiful weekend. And remember, Friday is the day of Venus, so look after yourself. Bye.